The Sacramento Kings are 1-0 in the post-De'Aaron Fox era, getting off to a really nice start here. The first game after a big trade is always weird, especially since usually the guys in the trade aren't available yet. So, Zach LaVine wasn't here for the Kings. But a lot of times teams do play well. I mean, I remember when the Kings traded for Domantas Sabonis, the Kings played this same, Minnesota Timberwolves team, and it was a great time. Kings came out and played really well, and Sabonis was great. But the difference is Sabonis was actually playing in that game where we didn't have LaVine. But the Kings still, without Fox, they got plenty of offensive weapons. It's not like their offense just dies without Fox. And so while it feels like we're kind of just sitting here waiting for Zach LaVine, this was still a very important win. I mean, one, just because every game's important in the Western Conference, but two, because you split the season series with the Timberwolves, and that's a team that you're fighting with. And you kind of wanted to salvage this road trip because it wasn't going well. So at least you go 2-4, which, I mean, all things considered, isn't really that bad considering what was going on this road trip. And so with Fox out, with Fox obviously traded, LaVine not here yet, Keon Ellis comes into the starting lineup, plays 34 minutes. I mean, that's the great thing about this. Keon Ellis can just slot in, and he gets to play starter minutes and play at the end of games and make a huge impact. 13 points, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 for 3 from 3. Like, he is incredible. And I would love if he could keep playing that many minutes. The problem is you traded for Zach LaVine, so this is immediately going to stop. This was a one-game thing. LaVine's going to come in, and then the Kings are going to have the exact same problem they did before, which is you have 4 guys that aren't defenders in the starting lineup. But it was nice to be able to live with another defender in the starting lineup for one game. And it's kind of interesting now when you have Zach LaVine coming in. I mean, before, I was a big advocate for Malik Monk going to the bench and Keon Ellis coming into the starting lineup. Now you can't do that. You can't do that because now Malik Monk is your only point guard on this entire roster. And that's where things get weird because you ain't benching LaVine or Keegan or Domas or DeMar. And now you're not benching Monk because he's your point guard. So now there's no chance of Keon starting when everyone's healthy. So that's one bad aspect of the trade, I guess you could say. Because, man, he just makes such an impact when he's in there and was a big reason that the Kings win this game. And the Kings defense, I thought, was huge down the stretch, actually getting stops. Like against Anthony Edwards, I feel like we've just seen so many times the Timberwolves just be able to score nonstop in the clutch, just mainly through Anthony Edwards. And so for us to be able to have Keegan on him, and then, oh, here comes a switch, and now it's Keon on him. Like that's a very nice thing to have that we're not used to as Kings fans. Because then on the other side, you have a Timberwolves team that is throwing out Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker for a lot of the game. And so now, without De'Aaron Fox, without Zach LaVine here, well, Malik Monk, you are the primary ball handler, and you got a lot of attention on you. And at times, it was a bit of a struggle, but he just kept with it. And he ended up having a good game, although maybe slightly inefficient. Like, you'll still take that. But what was huge to start this game was Keegan Murray's shooting. And it wasn't just his shooting. He crashed the offensive glass, got a putback, had another nice drive, scored. And then you just had Keegan and Naz Reid going back and forth, hitting shots. But you also had other Kings hitting shots and other Timberwolves hitting shots. I mean, there was just... It's not like the defense was horrible in the first quarter. I don't think it was great from the Kings. But these were just tough shots, and everything was going down for both teams. And so I think it was really nice when the primary offense for the Kings now is just going to be Malik Monk, pick and roll with Sabonis in this game. It was nice for other guys to step up, mainly Keegan, to relieve some of that offensive burden that has to come out of the pick and roll game, because the Timberwolves, they keyed in on the pick and roll and they did a good job defending it for most of the game. And they didn't let Monk have anything easy and didn't let Sabonis get any easy baskets really at the rim through that pick and roll. And so the Kings had to find other ways to score. So Keegan coming out and scoring 17 points in the first quarter was massive, even if he only scored 2 points the rest of the game. But you also had DeMar being on fire. But where the Kings were really struggling defensively was guarding the pick and roll. The Timberwolves were trying to put DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis in the action as much as possible. And early on, the Kings were putting two on Anthony Edwards. They weren't switching, and Sabonis was keeping Ant in front of him. Most of the times it was Anthony Edwards around these screens. But then the problem was on the backside. It just opened up Gobert for easy look after easy look, and the help wasn't really getting there, or it was just like too small, because a lot of times on the backside in these situations, it was Malik Monk or it was Keon Ellis. And to Monk's credit, he did block Gobert once. But the Timberwolves were just feeding these passes inside in the pick and roll way too easily, and the Kings' rotations weren't quick enough, and they weren't quick enough because you're worried about Naz Reid, who's sitting in the corner and who can't miss from three, so it's like fair enough. And so that made the Kings go into a zone. And the first possession, Jaden McDaniels just kind of like loses the ball inside, hits off the backboard, comes right back to him, and he gets an open layup. But I think for the most part, the zone did its job, and the Kings were pretty active defensively in it. I thought the guy who came in and did the best in that zone was Trey Lyles. He was super, super active. He ended the game with 2 steals and 2 blocks, 8 rebounds. I thought the Kings, and mainly Lyles, were just like hustling super well in this zone. And I also liked when Rob Dillingham came in and they were in this zone, they immediately threw numbers at him at the top, at half court, to try to trap him, to try to make him uncomfortable, to try to force him, a young guy, into some tough spots and hopefully force some turnovers. And so I think once the Kings went zone, the activity picked up. They didn't have to worry about this pick and roll game as much, and that helped out the defense significantly. And I just liked the energy that the bench came in with. You had obviously Trey Lyles, but then you also have Devin Carter and Isaac Jones coming in. And Devin Carter, he came in with good energy, was rebounding well, had 5 rebounds, had an offensive rebound in transition and a putback. But he was a little like out of control a bit, or maybe was just trying to like do things a little too quickly. Had a few passes that were off, like lost control of the dribble. With the Kings not having a backup point guard now, because Fox was the backup point guard, you kind of have Carter running point guard a little bit. And so he tried to run the pick and roll with Sabonis once and just like kind of threw up what was kind of like a lob to Sabonis. And Sabonis caught it and still had a good matchup against Gobert, but it just felt like everything was a bit off for Devin Carter. He's definitely not quite there yet as a rotational player. But I loved what Isaac Jones came in and did, and that just, I mean, every time he plays, I just say the same thing. Loved what he was doing rebounding the ball, and I say that he has 0 rebounds. But rebounding is not exactly quantifiable by rebounds. He had some very nice box outs, tipped the ball to a King one time, was just holding his ground defensively inside, running the floor with energy. And also, it's kind of nice to have a guy who you can throw the ball into in the post against a mismatch or even not a mismatch, and who you can be confident in. He's a really good post player. And so his contract just needs to be converted to a regular roster contract, because the Kings have 2 open roster spots. He has to get one of them. And right out of the second quarter, the Kings drew up a play for him to get an alley-oop pass from Malik Monk. So that's kind of a different element that he adds to this Kings team as well. That was a really nice play drawn up. He drew a loose ball foul, going for an offensive rebound. So just really nice minutes from IJ. In that second quarter offensively for the Kings, after just a great shooting quarter in the first quarter, and Keegan being super aggressive and taking things off the dribble himself, which is really nice to see Keegan do. In the second quarter, when he wasn't doing that, you saw the length and ball pressure of the Timberwolves start to bother the Kings a bit. You could tell they were bothering Monk. They were pushing the Kings out onto the perimeter. There were some late shot clock moments, and we saw that really throughout the rest of the game. And so there were some possessions that were kind of lost to it, but the Kings limited turnovers. They only had 10, despite some relentless perimeter pressure. And they were still able to get good shots a good amount of the time. And defensively, the Kings were better in that second quarter. Because in the first quarter, yes, the Timberwolves were hitting tough shots and Naz Reid was just hitting deep threes. So that's not all on the Kings defense, but specifically handling the pick and roll with Gobert And mainly when you didn't have to deal with Ant and it was Rob Dillingham running that pick and roll, it was just easier to contain. And Sabonis just did a better job of containing Gobert and not letting him just roll straight to the rim. And that was because the other perimeter players were doing a better job of fighting over screens and offering some help to stop the guard from just going straight into the lane. Lyles went on a nice little individual run where he got a steal out on the perimeter. I thought he was in trouble, but he just came up with a steal, led to a layup. Then next possession hits a corner three. And it felt like the Kings were coming up with a ton of blocks or just stops at the rim. But then the problem was the rebounding. And really, it was on both ends. The Kings were doing a good job on the offensive glass. The Timberwolves were as well. Both teams had 11 rebounds in this game. But what the Wolves were doing they were attacking inside, and Sabonis and other guys were doing a pretty good job of stopping that initial attack and forcing a miss at the rim. But then the problem is, then the big man for the Timberwolves, whether that was Gobert or Luka Garza at times, were kind of just carving out space down low. So either they could get a rebound or the guards from outside were coming in and crashing. And I just thought that the Kings perimeter players didn't do a very good job of coming in and crashing the glass. DeMar, I didn't think his rebounding was very good. Not that I expect it to be. Keon, I don't think was very good rebounding the ball either. Like there's one specific time that comes to mind where Sabonis forces a miss at the rim, but then Keon just doesn't crash the glass, doesn't box out, and his man, I think it might have been Anthony Edwards, comes flying in for a putback. So the Kings were kind of bleeding some second chance points that way. And Anthony Edwards was trying to specifically search out DeMar and Monk to attack, but I think the Kings did a much better job of containing Anthony Edwards in that second quarter. Because really, it was the passing of Ant that killed us in the first quarter. But in the second, we started blitzing him at times. And the thing about blitzing him is then they were forcing misses, but then you got to get the rebound. And I do think Keegan did a good job of covering for Sabonis inside because Sabonis is way out on the perimeter. His rebounding was good. But the Kings' offense kind of stagnated a little bit. Monk was just struggling to get anything going in that pick and roll. And Sabonis had gotten like nothing to that point. And Sabonis throughout this game just couldn't hit a jumper. 0 for 3 from 3, couldn't hit the mid-rangers. But he started to get it going inside. He just started attacking Luka Garza. And the good thing that the Kings were doing were they were getting him the ball early in transition before the Timberwolves could load up. And then he was just attacking early, and Luka Garza cannot guard him. So he got like 6 points towards the end of the second quarter to end the half on 8. The one thing that really frustrated me was when he picked up a second foul and he gave up free throws because the Timberwolves were in the bonus going for an offensive rebound. And it was just a dumb one. I accept that sometimes he's going to pick up these loose ball fouls because he's going after rebounds and you don't want to stop him from doing that. But this one is just, it was not a smart foul, and it's only his second foul, but it frustrated me because I'm like, this is the type of foul that then he immediately picks up another one and gets him into foul trouble. And he didn't for the rest of the half, and that was good. But then he came out in the third quarter and immediately set like just a really bad screen. That was called an illegal one. Then got hit with another foul on an offensive rebound. So now he's in foul trouble with four fouls. And so that second foul of his frustrated me, and the third one did as well, the illegal screen. Because he's way too important, especially when you're without Fox and you don't have Levine yet. He's way too important to be getting into this foul trouble. But Monk started to find himself towards the end of the second quarter. And really, he was finding himself in the mid-range because he couldn't get all the way to the rim in the pick and roll. He couldn't find Sabonis with these pocket passes. So he started finding himself in the mid-range. And that was good because DeMar had a great first quarter and was just hitting every shot. But he struggled a bit in the second. He struggled to find his shot. And he actually passed up just like a wide open midi that would have been a 2-for-1. So in terms of the clock, it was a good shot as well. And he passed it up and it led to a shot clock violation. And I just think it was one of those moments where they had a few of these moments where they passed up some shots kind of getting later into the shot clock. And you just can't do that against the Timberwolves when they have so much length out there defensively, because once you try to reset, it's so hard to then get by them. Sometimes that works for the Kings where it's like, okay, reset, and with 5 seconds left, you throw it out to Monk or you throw it out to DeMar and they make something happen. But just specifically against the Timberwolves here, their perimeter pressure was just so good that that didn't really work. But the main thing that got the Kings up, what was it, 8? Yeah, 8 by halftime and got them a double-digit lead at one point, was Sabonis finally getting himself going. That was kind of the difference maker that separated the teams. But then, like I said, he got in foul trouble early. Isaac Jones had to come in early in the third quarter, and that led to some pretty bad rebounds. And again, the Kings started bleeding some second chance points in like frustrating moments. Sometimes there are just moments where you're going to give up some offensive rebounds, but there were some very avoidable offensive rebounds that they were giving up. But the offense, it still had a little bit going early on there. Malik Monk was cooking a little bit. You had Keon getting a steal that led to a DeMar and one. Then he got another steal. So it seemed okay when Sabonis first went out, but then after a while, then Malik and DeMar just started kind of playing catch, and nobody was really moving, and they were just on the same side, just not really doing anything, not able to get past these perimeter defenders of the Timberwolves. And so then Devin Carter comes in, and he's running the point, and he immediately turns it over when Malik Monk went out. And the Timberwolves tied it up because of this really stagnant offense from the Kings. And so that's going to be one of the interesting things is how the Kings decide to work the lineups with really only one point guard in Malik Monk. And honestly, I wish the Kings had gotten Lonzo Ball in that deal from the Bulls. I think Lonzo actually would have been a great fit for this team. And it's funny because you're really leaning into the whole you're the Western Conference Bulls thing. But I actually think that the Kings might need a backup point guard here, which is kind of rough because you also need a lot of other things. But we'll see what the Kings actually decide to address, if anything, at the trade deadline. But I feel like it's so hard to break up Monk and Sabonis, but at the same time, I mean, we'll see how Levine fits. It feels like you might have to split Monk and Sabonis up so Sabonis can kind of run the offense in one unit and Monk in the other, but we'll see. But the Timberwolves tied it up, and then Lyles found Keegan on a nice cut, and Keegan dunked it for his only points past the first quarter. And that's the thing with Keegan. He went 7 for 11 on the game. You know, when he has a big quarter or whatever, a big moment in a game, then, you know, he doesn't keep looking for his shot. It's not like he just starts missing, or it's not like the other team totally takes him out of it, but it's just like he always plays within the offense. And sometimes I just, I wish he didn't do that. And I wish he went and got the ball and went and did something a little bit. It's okay if he starts missing some shots. But then you had DeMar score 4 straight for a nice little 6-0 run. Really good response from the Kings there with the Timberwolves tying it up. Then you had Devin Carter taking it strong to the rim, but didn't finish, and it was a little bit out of control, and then he hit his head and had to come out of the game. So that wasn't great. And that led to an and one on the other end. And it was an and one that Lyles gave up. And Lyles gave he gave up some cheap fouls, but also he stopped Anthony Edwards at the rim twice. So fair enough, I guess. You had Sabonis get back in towards the end of the third quarter, and that was a scary time because it's like if he picks up another foul here, we could really be in trouble. And it felt like Sabonis, he just couldn't quite get it going. Like even his rebounding was a bit off. He wasn't grabbing the rebounds he normally grabs, and they were kind of like bouncing off his hands, and he couldn't get his shot to fall. He just didn't quite have it. And there was one time where DeMar had the ball out on the perimeter, and he could have found Sabonis inside, and then he didn't. And we had like a 3v2 on the backside, and DeMar just didn't pass it. And then he just chucks a long 3 against Gobert and hits it. So it's like, well, he hit it. So cool. But yes, I mean, Sabonis, he went 5 for 15 for only 14 points. He did have a really nice putback to get the Kings going in the fourth quarter. And I think that was after Malik Monk went down because Gobert put his forearm into his chest. It's wild the amount of stuff Gobert got away with. It was just the Timberwolves were allowed to be super physical on the perimeter, especially in the fourth quarter. I mean, Anthony Edwards, the stuff that Ant got away with was pretty crazy, But the Kings didn't really have a problem with Ant, so it's fine. They just drove right by him because he was being too aggressive. But the fact he didn't get called for many of these fouls, and Gobert as well. Gobert didn't have a foul until the fourth quarter. But the Kings, they started driving to the rim, but it was like a little out of control, and like they didn't totally know what they were going to do after that. And, they didn't want to finish over Gobert. And so it led to some like awkward plays. I don't know if it was a turnover for Monk or if it counted as a shot, but there were just some awkward plays. And Naz Reid hit a three to put the Timberwolves up one. And so that was the Timberwolves' first lead since very, very early in this game. But then just like when the Timberwolves had tied it up, the Kings answered. Keegan had a nice drive. He kicked it out. Ball gets swung to Keon. He sidesteps for a three. Then Monk comes down and hits a midi. And from there, it was the DeMar show and the Monk show. Those two guys were just hitting shots, especially DeMar. Sabonis, he missed 2 free throws. I mean, that kind of adds on to his just shooting struggles from this game. And the crowd, going crazy because they win something. But then Lyles gets the rebound. I always think that's so funny because like the crowd's going crazy. Yeah, you missed 2 free throws. And then it's like, oh, that was actually a bad thing because the other team got the rebound. Lyles gets that rebound against Gobert, and then DeMar knocks down a midi. So that missed free throw worked out for us. And it also worked out for the fans because they got free whatever. So good for everyone. At one point, it felt like the Kings' offense was super stagnant, and honestly, it kind of was for most of the fourth quarter, and it just relied on shot making from guys. But Malik Monk was trying to get something going, and he just couldn't. And Sabonis, he started popping out to the perimeter, but because he couldn't really hit a shot, it wasn't really that effective. But we were getting stops at the same time, so stagnant offense, but you're getting stops on the other end. But I think Doug Christie realized, he's like, okay, we're not really going anywhere offensively. So he called the timeout when we were up 2. But Lyles, he had that offensive rebound against Gobert. He also just came up with a bunch of really important, not even necessarily rebounds. I mean, he had 8 in this game, but he just good box outs and really good just fight down low from him. He just had such a good hustle game. And the Kings defense down the stretch, whether it's just the defense itself or the rebounding, it came up big. Anthony Edwards he kept trying to split the Kings defense when Sabonis was blitzing on him. But the Kings just had super active hands, and they were forcing Ant into tough shots or getting deflections on the ball. Keon came away with one, and then he threw it away, and when it went and got it himself and was called for a travel. And I was like, but isn't that just a dribble? He threw it. And then he caught it. Like, isn't that, bounced? Isn't that just a dribble? Like, I don't know how that rule works. But then Keon, he D'd up Naz Reid. And the one thing I really noticed was, Naz Reid, he's so scary from 3, right? But Keon Ellis did a better job than anyone at closing out on him. His length was so disruptive. There's a big height discrepancy, but it didn't really feel like it because of Keon's length. Naz is a pretty long guy, it feels like, as well, but Keon did such a good job on these closeouts, and I think it's because he can close hard, but then Naz still can't get by him because Keon can recover, and Keon plays like the herky-jerky defense, like, I don't want to stay in front of you, I'm everywhere but in front of you, I'm trying to knock the ball away. So he was super effective against Naz Reid whenever that matchup came about. And the Kings, they hit some tough shots. Monk banked in a tough turnaround. That put the Kings up 6 with 4:45 left, led to a timeout. There was an interesting play inside where Gobert, he swung an elbow straight at Sabonis' head. That could have been really bad, but he just missed. Gobert just, like I said, got away with so much down the stretch of this game, and so did Anthony Edwards. But he finally got called for a foul on DeMar. And it's always funny when a guy is getting away with everything, but then the foul that they finally call isn't like the huge amount of contact. So then the crowd is like, what? They're going crazy. Like, how do you call that? When that wouldn't have been the reaction if they just called some of these other things. But DeRozan came up huge, hitting midi after midi. Only made 1 out of 2 of those free throws that I was talking about. And the Kings were doing everything they could to deny Anthony Edwards. And there was one point where Keon went out and doubled him with Monk. And it was a really good double, and it forced a miss, but then they couldn't come up with the rebound. Then Mike Conley started taking over. I mean, he was catching the ball and Keegan took a bad angle. And so Conley gets to the rim. And then later on, Conley had that, the oops to Gobert and the three. But the teams, they started just going back and forth. Conley to the rim for a layup. DeMar midi. Anthony Edwards got to the line for 2 free throws. Monk got to the rim. And that's the one where I felt like Anthony Edwards fouled him multiple times. And then Naz Reid gets the and one. So that was kind of my frustration. You're allowing so much physicality by Anthony Edwards. And then you give up that and one to Naz Reid. But I think what DeMar really started doing well was utilizing Sabonis screens down the stretch. Because when he was just going one-on-one, I mean, he definitely scored one-on-one quite a bit. But there were also other times where like he couldn't get to his spots because of the pressure on the perimeter. And so he really started utilizing these Sabonis screens in the middle of the floor super well and started actually getting space off them and getting inside to the free throw line to his spots and was just knocking down shots. I mean, there was just no good matchup for DeMar on the Timberwolves despite the defenders that they do have. Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they bothered Monk, but they didn't really bother DeRozan all that much. Then you have Conley, or DeRozan got a bucket to put the Kings up 4 with 30 seconds. Then Kings did kill 12 seconds, but Conley was able to get inside for an oop to Gobert. But, you kind of just didn't want to allow a 3 in that situation, and you killed 12 seconds. You took the ball out of Edwards' hands. That's kind of what you were trying to do. Of course, you don't want to give that up, but Monk just got beat off the dribble. But then Monk comes through, hits the free throws. Then Anthony Edwards drives inside, and too many defenders collapsed on him because it feels like you still want to be playing no threes, and he just kicked out to a wide open Mike Conley who hit a 3. But Malik Monk, again, free throws, knocks him down, and then Monk came up huge to strip the ball, and it went off Jaden McDaniels. Kings challenge, get the ball back. Sabonis hits huge free throws. So the Kings, it wasn't their best free throw shooting game for most of it, but then they go 6 for 6 towards the end of the game to really close it out, and 7 for 8 if you're counting the DeMar free throws. So just a very nice win, a necessary win to get yourself back above 500, split the season series with the Timberwolves, get the good vibes flowing again. You can finally move past this whole situation. There might be more trades coming, but you move past this whole De'Aaron Fox situation, and you're just trying to make the playoffs here. And I mean, I do think that the Kings, if everything falls right, like they could be an even better regular season team. I think my worry does come without Fox. Like, you don't have the guy in the playoffs, maybe. I mean, DeMar could be that, but he's getting a little older. But 33 points in this game, he's still got it. But I think regular season wise, I mean, the worry is about the backup point guard spot are definitely valid. The defensive backcourt is valid. But LaVine, he's not a horrible defender. He's bigger. He's athletic. I think he probably fits the offense better with the starting lineup. Like, just considering the starting lineup, and he provides that spacing. The playoff Sabonis, I think, is going to be really good. A guy that can probably play off ball better than Fox, and probably pairs with DeRozan offensively better. I know Zach LaVine's going to want the ball in his hands still, and there will definitely be a place for that. But I think he's just a better off ball player than Fox, so I could see that being good. It's just in those lineups where you need someone to really have the ball in their hands when Malik Monk, your only point guard on this team, is out. There's definitely some questions there, but the Kings weren't even good in those situations anyways, so could it get even worse? Maybe not. This team should still be competitive, right? They should still be able to compete for these playoff spots, especially if they address some of their weaknesses. I think right now you see kind of 3 spots where you could improve. You could get a backup point guard, you could get a backup 5, or you could get a wing defender. And I don't expect the Kings to address all those problems, but you just need to address at least 1, if not 2. It sucks that we won't see Keon Ellis continuing to be in the starting lineup, and I think that's always going to be the problem with this 4-man top of the roster that you have with the Kings. But it was definitely a feel-good game after the drama that we've been going through here. Malik Monk played 42 minutes in this game, and that tells you all that you need to know about the point guard spot on this team. He went 10 for 23 from the field for 26 points, 5 assists, 8 rebounds, a steal, a block. He did have 4 turnovers. That's all good. And he came through when it mattered, and he kept going at it. Not every attack was successful, but he just figured out different ways. That pick and roll game, it wasn't quite working, getting all the way to the basket. So you go to the mid-range. I felt like it was some good adaptation throughout the game from Monk, because he's got a whole lot of opportunity here, and he took advantage. But DeMar, obviously huge game from him, 14 for 25 from the field for 33 points. He went 2 for 4 from 3. That deep 3 against Gobert, I don't think that's something we've seen before. He also hit a toe on the line 3. So again, I'm going to keep saying it. He's shooting threes and he's making threes, and he's getting more comfortable shooting high volumes. And I don't care if he has his foot on the line. I really don't. And he just went to work in the clutch like we know he can. And again, I mean, I feel like the Kings were more balanced down the stretch of this game when you have Keegan and Keon as your defenders and shooters in there, and then you have Monk and DeMar as your on-ball offensive guys, and you have Sabonis in the middle of it all. So it's going to be interesting to see how LaVine fits in. I mean, at times I'm sure he'll be an on-ball guy, but feels like he could really thrive in just like an off-ball role. Sabonis, 5 for 15 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3, 4 for 6 for the line. Not good shooting splits. He really struggled to begin this game. He ends with 14 points and 11 rebounds, only 3 assists for him. Just not his greatest game. I think there was more focus on him as kind of a playmaker and possibly scorer that he had to deal with defensively. Got into the foul trouble a little bit. So not his best game, but it feels like even bad Sabonis games, he's contributing positively out there. Keegan, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 7 for 11. Great first quarter. Just needs to be able to get more involved at times. Like when he's hot, he's just got to shoot the ball. Just let it go, man. I don't want these efficient nights from him. I want the high volume nights when he's got it going. Who cares about being efficient? Let it go. And I mean, I felt like came out super confident. Keon, the same thing. Like they were both taking some kind of contested threes, but they were good shots and they were knocking him down. Keon went 3 for 3 from 3. He finished, I mean, I already read out his box score, which is insane. 13 points, 2 blocks, 3 steals, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. Just did a little bit of everything, was efficient in doing it, and came up with big defensive plays. I love the defensive duo of Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis. It's so fun to watch. And then you have off the bench, Trey Lyles giving a great 23 minutes, 5 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Another just box score stuffer type of game. Great hustle from him. Great physicality from him. Even got it done defending on the perimeter. Isaac Jones came in for a very solid 12 minutes with 4 points. Gave us the nice defense. We even saw him for a very short period of time at the 4 alongside Sabonis. And so that's interesting. It begs the question, can he hit that outside shot? But he didn't get the opportunity in this game. So we'll continue to watch that because, of course, he's not going to take a lot of threes, but there's going to come a time when we start seeing him shoot the 3, and we'll see how that goes. But give this man a contract. Devin Carter, 8 minutes, 2 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, a turnover, inefficient. It doesn't seem like the game has slowed down for him offensively, and that makes sense for a rookie. His impact definitely comes from the hustle plays and from his rebounding, his point of attack defense. But it's going to be interesting to see how much opportunity he gets, because with LaVine coming in, obviously he's probably going to be back to the same role he was when Fox was here. But I still wonder if he gets maybe some more run as a backup point guard. That worries me a little bit because it doesn't really seem like he's a point guard. And with the offense seeming a little rushed for him, that's probably not his best spot at this point, but we'll see. And then you had 6 Doug McDermott minutes where like the only time you could tell he was out there was when he was fouling someone defensively. I mean, he didn't really do anything. The Kings now come back home for one game against Orlando, and by all accounts, Zach LaVine will be playing in that game. And I don't know about Sidy Cissoko, but I mean, Sidy Cissoko, not that he'll get much run at all, but an interesting guy, because we saw Doug McDermott out there play 6 minutes, so why can't Cissoko a long wing that we kind of need. Why couldn't we see him get 6 minutes? Because he can't shoot the ball is the answer. He's just like the classic, if he could figure out how to shoot the ball, then maybe. But we should see Zach LaVine. That's obviously very hype. I'm excited to see him coming around Sabonis screens, getting off threes, hopefully we see some heat checks from him. I feel like the heat checks that we are going to see between him and Monk are going to be fun. I mean, I feel like Monk's kind of toned it down a little bit with the heat checks, but Zach LaVine is like the craziest heat check guy in the league. So I just want to see him chuck some deep threes. Why not? You only play your first game in a Kings uniform once. Also, before I forget, thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers. That's pretty crazy. That's a crazy milestone to hit. Not something I ever thought I would hit. So thank you guys for that. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be right back here after the game against Orlando on Wednesday to recap it. So I will see you guys then. Peace.